Oregon just played its best game of the season, and there was one thing in particular that made me really happy about it.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day and your number one source to stay up to date with the Oregon Ducks. Of course, this episode brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, where, guess what? You can get a big return. New customers can place $5 bet, and you'll get $150 in bonus bets if you win. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Get $150 if you win that first $5 bet. Could have been something as simple as Oregon beating Washington, which they did very comfortably. I've got my individual standouts. And did we get a glimpse at the 2025 backfield? Maybe. You'll just have to wait and stick around to find out altogether. But what I loved most about this game from Oregon was off a bye against a team that hasn't been good defending the run this year. They ran the ball exceptionally well. My everydayers out there, who I very much appreciate, I appreciate all of you, but my everydayers in particular, who as the name implies, listen every day or watch every day, you know that I've been waiting for this game. Illinois was the last time Oregon hit the 200-yard mark. And guess what? On the ground, I mean. That was the last time. That was a while ago. That was the end of October. You had 3 games and a bye week since then. This was the rushing attack that I have wanted to see for a while. I think it makes Dylan Gabriel better. I think it makes this Oregon offense absolutely lethal. By the way, quick check-in. Where are my Will Stein haters at? Where did they go? I don't know where they are at today. I hope you're having a great day. I hope every Oregon fan's having a great day. I imagine you are. It's a great day to be a Duck. But yeah, Will Stein was really good. But the running game was really, really good. I thought it was well schemed. They stuck with things that worked. They were pulling guys around. There were a lot of counter concepts in this game. Hasn't always worked this season. Some teams defend it better than others, but that Washington front four was not equipped with the caliber of players to keep up with the Oregon front, and they ran the ball. They came out, and that drive off of a bye week at home to begin the game, it was poetry in motion. 9 plays, 6 runs, nothing fancy, hit a couple of nice passes, and just run the football and let them score. Then as the game goes on, Washington adjusted a little bit. Okay, now we'll throw down the field. Now we'll find a way to get an explosive to Trayshawn Holden. That is when this Oregon offense is at its best, when it's, hey, here's what we want to do, but if we can't do that, or if you're going to make an adjustment, take that away, then suddenly we're just going to go over here and we're going to do this. You take away the short passing game of Ohio State, we're going over the top. Washington, you make an adjustment in the running game, we're going to throw the ball. And Dylan Gabriel was good in this game. But I've been waiting for this running game to feel like it can carry the offense down the field. We have not seen that in a month. We just have not seen it. Not that the running game's been bad, but we have not seen it drive drives. We haven't seen it be the focal point of the way in which Oregon moves the ball down the field. And I was really encouraged. 6.5 yards a carry, 222 yards as a team. Jordan James ends with 99 yards. 99 yards. Misses a 100-yard game by one singular solitary yard. But the running game popping, I was really encouraged. And I don't think that it's going to be as easy. In fact, I know it's not going to be as easy to run the football like that against Penn State in the Big Ten championship game or against whoever Oregon plays in the college football play. I don't expect they're going to suddenly string together 200-yard rushing efforts. But this was the sort of game I was hoping would show up against Wisconsin. I think it was pretty clear that the offensive line needed the bye week, and they played awesome. By the way, shout out to Johnny Cornelius and the rest of the offensive line. They'll get another shout out later, but in particular, shout out to Johnny's mom, who's apparently a fan of the show and told me as much on Twitter over the weekend. That made my day. That was absolutely awesome. So we do seriously love having a Johnny and the rest of the offensive line. 31 seniors were honored on Saturday night at Austin Stadium. 31. There are a lot of guys that have been Ducks for a long time, including but not limited to a little-known baseball player named Bryce Betcher and Jeff Boss. I mean, there's just a lot of guys who deserve shout-outs, but I'll save that for later. I want to bring this back to the running game. When you have the ability, when you're Will Stein, to call anything and have a high level of confidence it's going to work, that's what the offense looks like. 49 points. Pretty good. Pretty darn good. And by the way, Washington hasn't been great against the run this year. They've been really good against the pass. But did Will Stein overcomplicate things? Did he try to outthink the room? Did he do what, frankly, Ohio State, who we know have two good offensive minds, Chip Kelly and Ryan Day, we saw what that offense is capable of. How'd they get shut down against Michigan? Will Howard threw an early pick, and then they just stopped trusting him. And they got away from what has been successful for them this year. And look, they're capable of running the football, of course, but they have reshuffling along the offensive line against that Michigan front four. They've got 3 NFL-capable wide receivers who we know are really, really good. And why is Oregon not going to face the Buckeyes on Saturday evening at Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis? Because Ohio State really wanted to run the ball. It felt at times like Ohio State was trying to send a message to Michigan. We can out-physical you. We can run the ball. We can do it. Well, guess what? They couldn't. They got outgained on the ground, and in these matchups, Oregon, Washington, Ohio State, anytime there's some mixture of those teams, it's a really simple formula. Whoever runs the ball more wins the game. It didn't have to be that way for Ohio State, but I felt like they were trying to outthink the room. Like, you have Emeka Ibuka, you have Jeremiah Smith. How are you not getting these guys the ball more? So that's why I appreciate what Will Stein did on Saturday, is he came out and said, hey, they haven't been good against the run. Let's see how they defend it here. Oh, look, they're not defending the run. Well, let's keep running the ball. Okay, now you've taken it away. Now we'll show you a counterpunch. Now we'll give you some play action looks. But I thought the under center action that they had was great. A wrinkle we haven't seen a lot of this year with the tight end fly sweep to Kenyon Sadiq, who only had 1 touch in this game, but moved the chains. And then they came back to that look, ran play action, and got Terrence Ferguson the touchdown. Like, I thought the offense was running at a really, really high. I thought the offense was, English is hard. I thought the offense was incredibly efficient, incredibly effective, smart. They were good situationally. I liked the game plan. I liked the in-game adjustments. And I think it all started with Oregon's ability to run the football earlier in the game. This is different than the Mario Cristobal era where it's, hey, let's run the ball, and then they'll just keep running it and have no downfield passing threat. That's not what this Oregon offense is. When it's at its best, it runs the ball like that and has the ability to be complementary. Dylan Gabriel had just over 200 yards passing, and they had 220 yards rushing. Sign me up for that. Sign me up for that any day of the week. Probably would have been more yards if Oregon hadn't forced the fumble and given the offense a short field in the second quarter. But what did they do after that? Did they try to get tricky? Did they try to get it all in one play? No, they just gave the ball to Jordan James, who was awesome and was running through defenders. He actually had 1 carry in the first half that I wasn't particularly thrilled with. He kind of stiff-armed a guy, and then he just ran out of bounds, stayed upright. I was like, that's not Jordan James. And then Jordan James arrived. And Ephesians Pryzak, good player. Boy, he looked silly trying to tackle him on the edge. It was off a pass reception, actually, in that second quarter burst from the Oregon offense. And, boy, that's Jordan James in a nutshell. He's just going to run right through you. He's really good. I thought Whittington responded well after the early fumble that was an infuriating play. Infuriating play. And then what happens? The defense is able to respond, hold to a field goal, no Whittington bounce back, and he had a great game. So that's what encouraged me the most, was to see that Oregon is capable of running the ball like that. The teams are going to have to prepare for it, that they can lean on it during the game. That, to me, was the best part from a football standpoint. There was the emotional satisfaction standpoint of winning the game 49-21. Yep, I felt that just as much as you did. But the best part, football-wise to me, was that Oregon came out and they had more success on the ground than they'd had in a month. Let me know your thoughts in the YouTube comments, or hit me up on X, formerly known as Twitter, at @SMcLaughlinCFB or at LockedOnDucks. Those be the handles. I love these segments. I love the segment coming up next. Individual standouts. Who deserves a name shout? Whose name needs to be spoken because of how he played on Saturday? Well, you're just going to have to stick around to find out. Right after we talk about FanDuel, of course, get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. They've got college football as well. And whatever my score prediction is, I guess you should just bet against it or something. I don't know. I just haven't been great for Oregon scores against the spread this year. But guess what? It's tough. You think you can do better? FanDuel.com. That's the place to go. Right now, new customers can bet $5, get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. And when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets, just visit FanDuel.com. That's the place to go. 150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. FanDuel.com, never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Joyous and ever important second segment sip on this wonderful Monday. I hope you're having a great day. Hope you're having a fantastic day. So when I'm thinking about who stands out individually, sometimes I go beyond the obvious, but sometimes the obvious is just so obvious that it has to be recognized on this particular segment, which I can only do after an Oregon game because there has to be a game to actually discuss. So yeah, I want to start with Bryce Betcher, who just played maybe his last game at Autzen Stadium, but maybe not. That's the crazy thing. I'm talking about this more tomorrow. I've gotten questions about it. I know people are asking this, that, and the other thing, but tomorrow's show, I will have Big Ten Championship game stakes discussion and more recruiting discussion because Oregon flipped the second highest rated recruit that Washington had on Sunday night. Yeah, winning on and off the field against Washington. Good time to be a Duck fan at the moment. So, Bryce Betcher has just so solidly become Oregon's number 2 linebacker to Jeff Bassa, who I also thought had a really good game. Bassa wasn't as involved all the time, wasn't making all the explosive plays, but he made a couple of really key tackles in spots where one play in particular, Bassa's sack in the game, Damon Williams, if he doesn't make that tackle, Jeff Bassa that is, Williams might run for a first down, maybe more, extend the drive. I thought Bassa was doing a lot of really good things, and he was also quite often, Jeffrey Bassa was the quarterback spy on Williams, who we saw. I think that kid's got a bright future. Like next year in Seattle, that Washington team is going to be improved if they do certain things in the offseason, which I suspect they will, and they keep Damon Williams from hitting the transfer portal. That kid's talented. I mean, he got sacked 10 times. He was 17 of 20 throwing the ball and did not have an interception or a fumble. So I was pretty impressed, quite frankly. But I thought Bassa did a great job. I thought Betcher did a great job just making an impact. Like, it almost feels like at times he's been quiet this year, but then when Betcher has an impact game, it looks like that, where he's all over the place, where he's got a sack, he's flying sideline to sideline, doing some good things in coverage. I love watching that guy play football. I'm glad we're not done watching him just yet. Secondly, the entire offensive line. This was an O-line special. Washington recorded, wait for it, 0. Like Mark Baum in The Big Short. 0. That's how many tackles for loss and sacks combined Washington had in this game. Dylan Gabriel was sitting back there patting the football. Pat, and he had all day. And you can't run for 6.5 yards a carry and 222 yards as a team if you don't create running lanes. The backs did well. Whittington looked particularly shifty in certain moments, and James was just running through tackles because that's what he does. But that starts up front. That always and forever starts up front. And Josh Connerly in particular, I thought had his best game of the year. He did not allow a pressure that I saw when I went back and watched the game again. And if you look at the plays where Oregon was generating, 7 to 12 yard plays on the ground, Connerly was often at the center of it. He was bulldozing guys. His overall season grade on Pro Football Focus has reflected what I've seen from him. He's playing better and better as the year goes on and making himself more and more money with the looming NFL draft. So I thought the entire offensive line was great. It was the same guard rotation, by the way. There was still no Marcus Harper. You had Nishad Strother at left guard. I thought he was awesome. And you flipped around between Davey Uli and Kavika Rogers. Hard to argue with the results. 6.5 yards a carry, no sacks, no TFLs. Oregon never went backwards until they were kneeling the ball down at the end of the game. That's crazy. I don't care who you're playing. Certainly a bowl team out of the Big Ten in Washington, that's really impressive. So shout out to those guys. And my buddy Alex, who was an offensive lineman in high school, loves when I give love to the big fellas up front. They earned it and then some in that game. They looked rested, they looked motivated, and they did a lot of things really, really well. And one thing that I meant to look up but forgot to, I'm going to find it real quick, was Oregon in this game played very clean. Very clean. 6 penalties for 49 yards. Didn't really feel like it was even that heavily penalized. Like all in all, that's not a bad number. Plus, it was mostly 5-yarders because there was a 15-yard face mask in there on Kobe Savage on what was probably his worst play of the night. He gets beat in coverage, then commits a 15-yard penalty. But hey, hard to argue with how the defense played, and I'll talk about defensive standouts here in just a moment. But 6 penalties for 49 yards, that reminded me a bit of the Michigan game. Like, frankly, I'm surprised the number is that high. I thought it was going to be lower. Under 50 yards of penalties, you take that every day of the week and twice on Sunday. I thought that, or Saturday in this case, because we're talking college football, I would have ventured a guess that it was close to the Michigan game where Oregon had 2 penalties for 10 yards. That's what it seemed like to me. And by the way, the illegal shifts called on Oregon, I have no idea where that call came from. Absolutely none. Trayshawn Holden motion, they throw it to T. Ferg on the screen. I don't know where that illegal shifts call even came from there. But I thought Oregon did a great job keeping the penalties to a minimum, and that was one of many reasons why they dominated in this game. So let's get to the defensive side. Well, wrap up on offense. Terrence Ferguson also had a great day blocking. Also set the Oregon all-time receptions record for a tight end. Incredibly deserving guy. He shouted out Spencer Webb, RIP forever and always, in the post-game press conference. I love seeing that. I thought he and Trayshawn Holden, outside of the running backs, were Oregon's best offensive players on Saturday night. Trayshawn Holden led Oregon in receiving yards. Evan Stewart didn't have a good game. Dropped a ball that would have been a first down early on. DG wasn't always looking his way. On the Tez Johnson touchdown, Stewart was actually wide open. They ran a little rub route, and the Washington DBs ran into each other, and Stewart was open, but DG had locked on to Tez, who was also wide open. That's got to feel good if you're Will Stein. Like, yeah, I just called a play, and 2 guys were wide open for easy touchdowns. And Dylan Gabriel made that throw look a lot easier than it actually was, but that's what he does when he's in rhythm there. But for Stewart and Johnson and Holden to all be capable on any given day of leading Oregon in receiving yards, Trayshawn Holden was awesome. He was awesome. If Tez had not made a third down catch, Holden had drawn a holding penalty on the defense. I thought Trayshawn Holden's route running in this game, when I went back and watched, was as sharp or sharper than it has ever been. He was phenomenal and had the big catch and run, which was kind of the first, okay, Oregon's fine. That was the first moment where you're like, yeah, I think Oregon's going to pull away in this game. Trayshawn Holden made that happen. So love that he had a big day. Okay, defensively. Top standouts to me. If you think I missed anybody here, let me know in the comments and I'll shout them out on tomorrow's show. But, you know, plenty of guys played well. Of course, it is a team effort when you put up, when you only allow 14 points. You know, it was the second unit guys that allowed that late touchdown against the Washington starters. By the way, I thought they did some good things, but certainly you can see why they're the second unit. Jamari Caldwell, Mateo Uyunglele, Jordan Birch, Amari Washington. These guys, Tatum Tuioti played well. I think he did some nice things under the radar, but I mean, Caldwell was wreaking havoc when Derek Harmon wasn't. Those 2 guys were so individually disruptive. And then you had Jordan Birch, and I thought it was funny on one of his sacks that Jordan Birch, they tried to block him with a running back while he was sprinting out. I think the tight end was supposed to help. I don't know. But once I saw him running upfield, and Birch had 2.5 sacks in this game. Once I saw him running upfield and the running back was trying to block him, I thought to myself, this is just going to end phenomenally well. And what do you know? It did. So I thought Birch, who I think was on a snap count in this game, managed 2.5 sacks. That's pretty darn good. So, like shouting out the entire offensive line, the entire defensive line, just across the board, they're so good. They're so incredibly good. I thought Amari Washington was the most underrated guy that had a good game, but man, they're really good. Then lastly on defense, I thought both Johnsons were outstanding. Brandon Johnson in coverage, maybe his best game of the year since Idaho, or yeah, I mean, he played really well in that particular game. I thought Brandon Johnson did good things, and Tysheem Johnson is at his best when he's flying downhill to make tackles in the backfield. Oregon doesn't hold Jonah Coleman to 3 rushing yards in that game. 3. 11 carries, 3 yards, and a fumble. And he had a touchdown as well. But, whoop-de-doo. 3 yards rushing. That doesn't happen if you don't have guys in the secondary who can tackle. And there were a lot of times in this game, whether in the quarterback run, RPO, halfback run, where the run fits coming down from the secondary were really good. And Tyshim had a couple of really good ones. I thought Brandon played well, but Tyshim in particular, big time shout out from the Washington game. If you think I missed anybody, you let me know. That's what we got tomorrow's show for, and many other things as well. But did we get a glimpse of the future there at the end? I have many thoughts, not just on Dante Moore, but on Dink Riggs as well, because, well, just you'll want to stick around. After we talk about Game Time, of course, which has Game Time picks. Do you know what that does? It makes getting to see your favorite teams play live, Oregon or otherwise, even easier. Game Time picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, whatever you're looking for, they have got it. And they've got all-in pricing. Toggling this feature shows the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout, and they have their lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So what more are you looking for? Do you not have your Big Ten championship game ticket yet? Game Time's the place to get it. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply again. Create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's Locked On College for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Was the backfield of the future on the field early in the fourth quarter? So I was calling a Southern Utah game for a decent chunk of this one. And I check over during a commercial break, and I see that Dante Moore is in the game. And I went, this is going phenomenally well. Indeed it was. So Dante Moore is out there. 3 of 3, 27 yards passing, marches the offense right down the field. Then, as the drive is progressing, you're watching this guy run the football, who earlier on Ducks versus them, I can't wait for that, by the way. Cannot wait for that one. Earlier this year, on one of those Ducks versus them recaps, you heard the coaching staff say Little Bucky when talking about Dink Riggs. And Bucky Irving, by the way, I'll admit it, he's proving me wrong right now. I loved him at Oregon. Wasn't sure how he'd do in the NFL. He's doing awesome. He's doing phenomenally well. He just had, I think 200 total yards of offense. Bo Nix plays later tonight. Everything's going great, right? It's all part of the plan, as the Joker would say. That was only a half Joker impression, so no judgment allowed. But I'm watching Dante Moore and Dink Riggs move this offense down the field and thinking, is this 2025? Is this what we're going to get? Two major thoughts. Let's start with Dante Moore. First of all, how comfortable did he look? He was not going up against the Washington twos. To my knowledge, they kept the offense and defensive starters out there the entire game. You had Damon Williams and Giles Jackson and Denzel Boston going against the Oregon number 2 defense. And you also had guys like Cam Fibiculanen and Carson Bruner, who were starters and key players on the field when Dante Moore marched them right down the field. So nothing was overly complicated for Dante Moore's 3 passing attempts, but I liked that he looked comfortable. I also liked that he's a young guy and his arm in a cold weather game in November holding up just fine. Got plenty of arm strength. I was not as impressed with any of his 3 completions as I was with his incompletion. I'll start with the completions first. So he had a quick out route to Jeremiah McLaughlin, little off target, but not a bad thing to be shading the ball to the outside towards the boundary. And Jeremiah McLaughlin clearly going to be a guy that pops as a wide receiver next year. He is the go-to. He's been the go-to for Novosad. He's been the go-to for Dante Moore when they get in the game. That's clearly someone who's going to be a dude. He had a bubble screen to Tez Johnson. I think Tez was only in there to get himself back to game speed. He made sure to not take a hit running forward. The ball placement on a bubble screen, which is harder to do than you'd think, was absolutely positively perfect. So I liked all of those things. But it was the incompletion that made me go, that's right. That's what this guy's capable of. So on a play where Trayshawn Holden, again, drew a holding call. Back to my point earlier and why he was a standout for me. He was running phenomenal routes, just absolutely outstanding. He gets up, it's a cover 2 concept. So the corner's sitting in the flat, meaning he's going to try and jam and redirect Holden underneath. He gets too grabby, Holden runs, and Dante Moore has to layer this ball in between the safety and the corner, going down the sideline. That throw is as close to perfect as you could possibly have, and I think it actually was. I think the timing was perfect. It's just that Holden was held, and so instead of that ball being right on his hands, it was right on his fingertips. He gets hit by the safety. But that ball placement is what the scouting report on Dante Moore was when he came out of high school. It was, hey, this guy can put the ball in crazily accurate spots. He can move a little bit. Not a lot, but a little bit. Not as much as Dylan Gabriel, but he can move if he needs to. He's not a guy who's necessarily going to take off and run, but he can move in order to throw. And it's a small sample size. It's what we have to go off of. Small sample size, but a really encouraging one. Most importantly, the biggest thing for him is he needs to look and feel comfortable. Well, he needs to feel comfortable, which means he needs to look comfortable to all of us watching on TV, because at UCLA, he never looked comfortable. Never looked comfortable. The game was moving too quickly. Didn't feel that way on that drive. I felt like he made the right reads in the RPO game, and he made some good throws. So I'm encouraged. I don't think anything has been 100% decided, because remember, we've seen Austin Novosad this year. He's done some nice things. I went back and watched the spring game several times after it happened, because I kept going to myself, thinking to myself, man, how did Novosad look that good? He can make really good throws. And by the way, when Novosad was in against Illinois in garbage time, they could have gone down the field and scored, but they decided to kneel the clock out because they were in that particular position. But Dante Moore gets in early fourth quarter, and this is just tremendously valuable work. And getting against Washington, yeah, that's definitely sweet. Like I didn't have that on my bingo card. Rivalry game. Washington's not bad. They're not great. Oregon getting the backups in early fourth quarter. That was pretty awesome. Keep them rested for the Big Ten championship game. So overall, liked what I saw from Dante Moore. I don't think he's won the starting job. I think you'd certainly consider him the favorite with his profile and history with Oregon. But I didn't see anything that made me go, oh my gosh, he's 100% the starter. I just saw things that made me go, he looks more comfortable. He's only throwing a few passes, but the offensive line was giving him a bunch of time to throw. That certainly helps. But that's kind of the idea, isn't it? Build an offensive line that protects your quarterback. Okay, now I want to talk about Dink Riggs. So Oregon's running back room next year could very well have Dink Riggs near the top of it. Could also not. Jordan James could come back if he wants to. Does that remind you of anybody on this year's team? Like, I don't know, Jeff Bassa, Terrence Ferguson? Just throwing it out there. A Johnny Cornelius, those guys could have gone to the NFL. They decided to come back. Maybe Jordan James does that. Maybe Jordan James likes his NFL draft stock where it is. Noah Whittington, well, he could come back. He's ahead of Riggs on the depth chart. Jaden Lamar, Jay Harris, we've seen those guys pretty sparingly throughout the year. Bottom line is this position group has a lot of depth. One thing that definitely stands out to me in the garbage time action we've seen, I think Jaden Lamar is a fine player. He can be, he does some lead blocking things and brings that kind of energy and that grit factor to the running back room. I'm never as impressed watching him run as I am Dink Riggs. That guy, they call him Little Bucky. Looks like Little Bucky to me. That's how it appears. Every time he touches the ball, I see the lateral movement. He doesn't look too small. He's a true freshman. This is a true freshman. And a guy who, by the way, recruiting rankings are great. They give you a lot of information in there. Riggs was the 4th lowest rated recruit according to 24/7. He came all the way from St. John's High School in Washington, D.C. He's a 3-star guy per 24/7. He's a 3-star composite. He's a number 700 player nationally. Some guys are just under-recruited. That's how he looks to me. So I'm not sitting here saying Jaden Lamar can never have a role in Oregon's offense and be a good player. I think he's solid. I think Riggs is better. I am far more impressed watching him run or the limited action we've seen from Jay Harris. those guys to me have brought more to the table from what we have seen so far as fans than what Lamar has done so far. And we also saw Lamar bust a 50-plus yard touchdown against Oregon State on a screen pass earlier this year. It's not as if the guy isn't capable, but Riggs' balance, vision, explosion, he looks like he's just got it. Showed a little bit of power on the touchdown. Like, that guy looks really good. So he might not be Oregon starter in 2025. He could be a Dante Dowdell, who, by the way, 100% a starting caliber back. He's thriving in Nebraska, and deservedly so. He's really good. You know why he's not here? Because he wasn't going to play. Because he's got guys ahead of him. So if there are guys ahead, maybe Riggs decides, I want to go somewhere and transfer. I wouldn't be able to blame him. Would not be able to blame him whatsoever. But I think it's a higher likelihood that Dante Moore starting in 2025 than Dink Riggs. But do we see both of them? Well, we'll just have to wait and see. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.